All right, so let's continue where we left off. So we have these buttons laid out in a nice grid now with a text view for displaying the number, either the number that is being entered or the result of the calculations. So still a couple of steps away from setting this up fully. One is that the font size in these buttons is really small. So we are going to select all the buttons and only the buttons. Make sure that only the buttons are selected. And then in the attributes on the right, we are going to look for text size again. And this time we'll choose, let's go with 30. So you will notice that sometimes we use the size as SP. And now if we scroll to the top, you'll see sometimes it's SP, sometimes it's DP. So SP stands for scalable pixels and DP is device pixels. So these basically, depending upon the pixel density on the device, they can consume more pixels or less pixels and look slightly granular. So that's the only difference between DP and SP. Well, the only difference is that this applies, SP applies to font sizes. DP is any other distances. Okay, so now we've got this part. Now we can start assigning text to these buttons according to our layout. Okay, so let's do the numbers and decimal and plus minus here. So choose the button. So this is, the text is, right now it says X, we'll make it 1. This will become 2. Like this, we'll assign all our numbers. So go ahead and do that in your environment. This is 0. This one is just a decimal point. And this is plus minus. Okay. That's as far as the numbers go. Then we've got a clear button and 2 of them are at your discretion. I'm going to, in mine, I'm just going to leave them as question marks. Just a reminder, if you don't see this attributes panel, make sure that it's not hidden. If it's hidden, it will look like this. You see this part on the right, attributes. I click it, it becomes exposed. So this is going to be multiplication, we'll leave it as X. This is division, addition, subtraction, and equals. So now you see more and more this is starting to look like a calculator. What do we want to do next? We have to do some more setup, and one of those things is giving IDs to whatever we would like to change. So what we want is, see these buttons, the text that is displayed on these buttons is going to remain the same throughout the life of the app while it's running until it gets destroyed. But this text view, it will change based on what numbers are being entered or what are being calculated. So we need to assign an ID to it, which is more readable. So we'll call it number display, change its ID. And then it is going to ask you this. See, what is happening is, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of refactoring, but let me go over it. It's a good opportunity. So when I tried to change this name here, right, it said text view 3, right? That was the original name. Now, when I try to change it, it offered me to refactor. See, what happens is that this text view 3, this ID, if we look at the code side of this, we will find that in many places this is referenced text view 3. So for example, here, this is a button 24. Oh yes, and this is another opportunity for me to talk about what those constraints are, what the chaining we did, what it does. See button 24. Let's locate the button 24 in the design view. This is our button 24. It's this button. So this button to the left of it is button 23. Below it is 28. So 23, 28, right? And on top of it is the text view. So 23, 28, and text view. If you go to the code and you look at these constraint, see layout constraint is the name of the parameter inside this XML. And it is saying bottom of button 24 is linked to the top of this button 28, the one that was below it. End to end of parent, so it is at the right edge, the end of it. So it's like this, top, and then end is the right edge, and beginning or start is the left edge, and then the bottom. So end to the end of parent, meaning it's at the right edge. Start to the end of where it starts is the end of the previous button 23, and where it stop is the bottom of text view. So if we now, and horizontal bias is just how that button is placed within the constraint. Right now, this number is not important because there is no margin. But if there was a margin, then this bias would determine where that button is placed. You remember those spring like the constraints looked like springs when it was just hello world. The bias determines how much tension on each side of the spring is and where that thing ends up. So right now it's 0.5, it could be any number, it wouldn't matter right now. And what happens is if we change the ID of the text view from text view 3 to number display, then it needs to be updated everywhere it is being used, you see? Text view 3, text view 3. And if we do it, if we go back to the design view and we say we want to change it, and it may even be in the Java code. Right now it is not, but it may be there as well. So if I now ask it to change number display, it is going to ask me rename ID resource text view 3 and its usages. So everywhere it's being used, it's going to change everywhere. So if I say refactor, it got changed. Okay. Now let's go look at the code where it said text view 3. You see, automatically it changed everything. So this is important. When you change this ID and it offers to refactor, say refactor. So it will change everywhere. That part done. Now let's once again, I want you to, well, let me go back to the slides first. So we've done this, we have done this as well. Now what we are going to do is we are going to start listening to when a click on the buttons happen. Okay. So in our layout editor, we now need to tell all those buttons that when you are clicked, you have to, you know, trigger something. Just like when we did the hello world, we triggered a function. And based on what was clicked, we will change the text view. So let's come back to this question right now. Let's just create the actions for the buttons. So go back to your layout editor in Android Studio and once again select all the buttons. You will notice that we are not going to bother changing the IDs of these. These are the IDs, button 40. You may have whatever, some other numbers, button 10, 11, etc. We won't bother changing them. We will just select all the buttons and we are going to change their on click attribute. And the reason we won't change these IDs is because we don't need to do anything to these buttons. We don't need to change their text or their color or anything like that. Okay. So once you have all the buttons selected, again, caution, don't select the constraint layout or number display, only the buttons. Then you will see an on click here. So in this on click, we'll give the name of the function. Let's call it button clicked. Okay. We'll do that. So now each and every one of these buttons will get linked to a function which is called button clicked, which needs to appear in our main activity. So it's complaining already, on click method does not exist, right? That's okay. We are going to add this. We need to add this declaration like we did last time for the hello world. I'm going to copy this code where it says corresponding method handler. It's giving us the function definition. Just copy it. Command C to copy on Mac. All right. And let me tell you something else at this point. See, so it doesn't feel like it's all black magic, right? That things happen without any sense. When this XML file is read, when that layout is created, here in the top level tag, Android X constraint layout tag, we are specifying a context dot main activity. So any functions, on click functions that are referred to here from buttons, the operating system knows that when that button is touched, the context in which it's being touched is this main activity. So it will look for a class called main activity. So main activity.java is where it goes. And this is where we need to declare that function. This is what the function declaration will look like. Public void button clicked, and this is just the type of the argument. We need to give it an argument name. So you will add that argument name here. Okay. And now, right now, let's just say we want to print an information message from a but, and this tag can be anything. Right now I'm just choosing, and I'll just say button clicked. Okay. And if you remember, anytime we have not imported any classes, this message appears, and you see these symbols here. It's offering to add this, to import it. If you just press Alt Enter, so just do that, and it would get added here. See, util.log. Okay, perfect. Let's run it and see if we can see that message when we click the buttons. If I go back to the main activity, I should see that not to the main activity main.xml. You see all those error messages they should disappear. It's going to refresh itself. It's complaining right now because it hasn't refreshed the background information. In any case, what app it says is running. Yes, look, it's here. So now, do you remember where to look for those messages that we are adding with log? You have to look for them in the logcat. Okay. And this is our app, and we can click on buttons to see what message comes. Something is happening, but there are too many messages here, right? And our message, we gave a tag of button. So if I just filter, see, this is the filter. I apply that tag. This is the tag, and this is the message button click. So see, anytime I'm clicking a button, it's producing another message button click. So far so good. It's doing what we want, right? Now our job is to figure out which button was pressed and do something accordingly, right? So let's try to figure that out now. So here is where it is coming when a button has been pressed. So what we'll do is we'll get which button it is. So here is what we will do. An incoming argument of the view that, so this view is what was clicked, which we know is a button. So we are going to cast it. This is the syntax to cast it. We cast it as a button. And again, you have to press Alt Enter to import the button type because it wasn't there before. So now the button is there, right? What do you do now? You've got the button. So which button has been clicked? We should be able to retrieve the text of the button. So that's what we'll do. Okay, so let's get that. Button text is basically button. Okay, there's one more thing I should share with you. As you're typing, right? The studio, this Android Studio editor will give you autocomplete options that can save you a lot of typing, and it will also avoid syntax errors, mistakes. But you just have to be careful to select the right one. See, as I'm typing, it's offering to autocomplete this to button, which is this variable. So I can double click it or press tab and it will accept it. And then what I want is the text. So I will get the text. So button dot, okay, this seems to have slowed down for a bit. Get text, right? And this is going to, well, this is complaining. Let's see what the problem is. If you take your cursor on this red line, or actually click here on the red bulb. So it is complaining that this button dot get text, it returns a char sequence. So char sequence is another representation of how a string can be internally represented, and we can convert it to a string by just using the function .toString. So this will give us the button text, right? Again, you can now check using a log message. We'll use the same tag and we'll print the text of the button that was just pressed. So we know how far along we have come. And step by step, this is how right now you're learning. You can use these log messages to just make sure that your every step of the way it is going all right. So let me press a button here. Now my logcat is hidden by default. Let me open it. See, button is 6. I had pressed 6, 9, 4, right? So now we know which button is being pressed. Okay. So for today, our target is to deal with all these digits and the decimal. That's all we want to deal with. And what we will do is, we'll whatever number is displayed here, we'll append to that. So for example, right now it says 0. If I press 1, I want the 0 to be replaced by 1, which is what a calculator does. But after pressing that 1, if I press 2, I want it to display 12. And then if I press 3, it should display 123 and so on. So we need to find out what is currently displayed here. And this is how we are going to do it. So another thing that you might want to do is comment your code. So here we want to find out which button was pressed, right? So this is how we are doing it. Then now we find out what was the number being displayed at the time of button press, right? So the way to do it is, first we get a reference to the text view, which we call the number display. Remember, we changed our text ID to number display. So we will retrieve that. So we'll say text view we'll use a naming convention. Text view is equal to, so anytime you're using an activity, a subclass of an activity, you have access to a function called find view by ID. See, as I'm typing find, it gave me as an auto completion this. What this does is, if I know the ID, it will retrieve that. And we did this in our hello world. So my ID are always they're stored in r.id, and see number displays and is a valid ID that I can use here. And this here is complaining cannot resolve. So again, alt enter, and it is going to get import the class. Okay, now remember that this find view by ID, it returns an object of type view. Ours is a text view, so we will cast it. And now we'll get the current number. So it's even though it is a number, it is stored as a string. So we'll say current number is equal to text view, this variable name, dot get text. And this, if you see the function definition, get text is returning a char sequence, right? So we'll run into the same problem as we did here on line 23. So we'll just cast it to a string. And I'm not using this logcat right now, so I'll hide it and get more space. Okay, So this is our current number that is displayed. So now what we do is we know what was the button text and we know what the current number is. So using those two, we can determine what to do when a button is pressed, right? And we set out as our objective for today to deal with these digits and the decimal. Anything else, we'll deal with it next time. So how many of you are familiar with switch case statements in Java? Switch case, if you Google, you will find lots of information. Let's look at the one from this website here. The way it works is it is like if else, those that block, but it's a more readable representation of the same thing. What you do is you use the switch statement and then you give it an expression that can be evaluated just like in an if x equal to 3. So x equal to 3 is equals, if it is equal, then it's true, otherwise it's false. That is your expression. In an if. Here, what happens is you just give switch and let's say you just say x. And then whatever the value of x is, based on that, you can have different cases. Well, x is a bad example because they're using xy here. But let's say x was a number, and then you could say case 1, do this. So if the number is 1, do this. If the number is 2, do this. If it matches nothing, then do this. And maybe you have nothing here, you don't do anything. And you will notice that after each case you break. If you don't break, what happens? It keeps on processing and it will then come to the default and do whatever is here. So this is your switch case. Basic, very basic. You can read more about it. You can look at some other pages as well. You can look at the Java documentation from Oracle. Okay, so what we'll do is switch, and our switch, the expression, the expression we'll use is button text, right? And now we have the options. If it's 1, do something. So the one thing that the documentation didn't tell us, or it wasn't obvious, it did say something like that, that if you do, I mentioned that if you don't break, it keeps on doing whatever follows. So in the same vein, you can club multiple cases. So what we are going to do is we are going to treat all the numbers pretty much the same. So regardless of which digit is pressed, our action is very similar. So we'll club them into one case. So you create a case corresponding to each digit. And the decimal. Okay. So in case any of these is pressed, this is going to be our code. What is it going to be? We'll process it. We'll basically deal with the digit or the dot. This is what we'll do. And then we'll break this and get out of here, get out of the switch. Now, you see what can happen is, let's do the simplest thing right now. Let's just take this current number, whatever is on display, and append to it whatever was pressed. Okay. So our simplest case is current number equal to current number plus button text. All right, question for you guys. What will this plus do here? Let's say the current number displayed was 3 and I press 5. What is this plus going to do? Think about it for a moment. Okay, think about the type of these variables, what kinds of object they are. See, button text is declared as a string, as is current number. So they will not be treated as numbers. They will be treated as strings. And plus will concatenate them. So if there was a 3 already and the next one is 5, it will become 3, 5, 35. It will not become 8. Okay. So now we have a new value of current number, and what we will do is we will assign it back to this text view. So let's say text view dot set text, and we'll assign it the current number. So do this much and run your app and see what happens. Okay. So now, right now it says 0 dot, right? Let me press something. See, it is concatenating, but it assumed the 0 dot to be the truth at that moment, that anything comes after that. In reality, it should have, right now, there is no way for us to start a number that doesn't start with 0 dot. So everything is a decimal, less than 1. So to fix that, what we need is we need to know when we are starting a new number. If we are starting a new number, we replace the 0 dot with whatever the new number is, right? So we need to start keeping. So we need to start keeping track of whether we are starting a new number. Okay. So we need to start, like I said, we need to track those. And the way we are going to do it is we're going to use some Boolean variables. You know what a Boolean variable is? So a Boolean variable is one that can take two values, true or false. That's it. So it's either true or it's false. So when our app first starts, we are starting a new number. So we'll assign it an initial value of true. Okay. Now I want to declare another Boolean variable called accepting new digits and assign it an initial value of false. Actually, no, this is, see, accepting digits. Just that much is fine. And this should also be true. This is something we'll use when we are entering numbers after, say, pressing an operator. So let's declare these two booleans, start new number and accepting digits. And now what we'll do is, instead of just blindly concatenating, we'll check, are we starting a new number, then do something else, do this. You see, if we are not starting a new number, it's okay to concatenate. Otherwise, we have to do something else. What do we have to do? We're starting a new number. So whatever digit was pressed is the first digit of the new number, right? So current number equal to button text. That's what we have to do. Let's run it now. Okay, let's see what's going on. So now it says 0 dot, right? Let me press 3 and see what happens. See, it got replaced 3. Now let me press 5 and see what happens. Oops. So what's going on? It's always replacing it completely. That's because, take a guess. It's got something to do with this. This start new number, we assigned it an initial value of true and it's always true. We should set it to false as soon as we start a new number. Otherwise, it will never go here. It will never concatenate. So now run again and see what happens. So let's press 3. It's got 3, 5, 6, 9. You see now, it's displaying the numbers we are typing. Isn't it wonderful progress? Now, what happens? See, we have got in one of the cases is the dot. See, if I press dot, something happened, right? I can keep on typing. What if I press another dot? Ah, you see the problem? So we need to check if there is already a dot present. If there is a dot, then we don't add another one. We ignore it. We ignore, just like a real calculator would. Open a calculator on your computer and try that. So here we will now check if button text equals dot and current number already contains a dot. That's what we want to check. So Java provides an easy function to check if, say, as soon as I type dot, it gives me all the completion options and there is a contains. It's exactly what we need. So if the button text is dot and the current number already contains a dot, then we do nothing. Already contains dot. Else we do the concatenation. So we are building on this. Let's run again. So I've got one dot. I'm going to press another dot. Nothing happened. I will press other digits. The dot is safely ignored. Okay. See, right now we don't have the C button program. So what we'll do is we'll just run it again. And I want to see what happens if you start with a dot. See if we need to process, do something special here. Okay. So it looks like this. Now, if I start with a dot, what did it do? It replaced the 0 dot with a dot. We still want that 0 to be there, right? So what we will do is we'll process that here. So if we are starting a new number and if button text is dot, then we'll do this, else we'll do this. And in both cases, we'll set the start new number to false. But what is it that's going to go in the if? Think about it. See, when we are starting a new number and somebody presses a dot, then our current number should become 0 dot. Otherwise, it should become the same as whichever digit was pressed. And then we will set the start new number to false. Okay. Let's run again and see what happens. Now we should be all set with entering the first number. Let's see. 23.650. If I press another dot, that is still working. And I pressed an X by mistake when I was trying to switch windows. Let's run again and start with a decimal this time. Okay, so I clicked on the decimal, you see, perfect. If I click on more decimals, nothing, it doesn't take. Good. So right now we are at a point where our first number, whatever it may be, is being accepted. So this is what your code should be at today. You've got the switch with these cases, and you've got code to deal with what to do when digits or decimal are pressed. And we'll build on this next time. We'll build the model, what to do now. Now a number is being entered, but after a number, an operator has to be pressed. An operation needs to be done, be it addition, subtraction, whatever our calculator allows. So that part we'll deal with next time. What I want to do now is go back to our presentation and see what else we have planned for today. So we did this just now. See, we specified the on click for all the buttons, and we are changing the text in the text view based on what numbers were being pressed. I also wanted to touch upon certain things about coding best practices. So I'm going to paste this as a separate link in Blackboard for you. This is about commenting. See, Java provides us a beautiful mechanism for creating documentation from comments. See, these comments which I have put here, these are more for programmers. You can also create comments for people to read as a part of the documentation. So this is generally good practice. If you're working in a team and you leave comments like this in your code, somebody else who has to do maintenance will find it easier. But in Java, there is something called Java doc. See, commenting in Java, this page is about commenting in Java. Before every class, every method, every declaration of a variable, all those things, you can put comments which start with a slash and a double star and then end with a regular star slash. And whatever is in here, Java doc is a tool that processes it and tells you that this comment is what describes this class. This comment describes this integer to keep track of for fun. This comment which appears just before this function describes this function. And what does it have? It increments a value by delta and returns the new value. That's what it does. See, its return type is integer, one argument also integer. And then you can describe what those arguments actually mean. So if you comment your code like this, then it becomes easy for somebody to run Java doc. and create a web page. So these documentations that you see, a lot of the Java documentation, let's go back to the previous page, switch statement, or maybe not switch statement may not be, but if you look at any class documentation in Java, then you will find that all of that has been generated using Javadoc. You can actually go and open the source files. It's all available. It's public domain. And you will see how it was created. So that's something interesting to know. Naming conventions for classes, structures, functions, variables. So if you look at our code so far, look at the naming convention that we have, the names we have created and used. Start new number, it's a boolean. It's fairly obvious what it could mean. Function name, button clicked. It's obvious that this is, so these are the kind of names you want to use. You don't want to use function name as f, who nobody has any idea of what that f function does, or a, b, or c. You want to be verbose. That makes your code more readable. Button text instead of just bt or something like that. So that's the other thing you need to keep in mind. So that's how we have done it, and I encourage you to continue that sort of a practice. And in fact, in the code you submit to me for your project, for any of the assignments, I want to see it like that. Otherwise, you'll lose marks. Autocomplete. I already talked about this. When you are typing something, starting, a variable name, the suggestions come. I'll start typing something, it will tell me what are the options. Use that. Makes code typing faster and easier for you. Code organization, code reuse. Okay. Code organization. If you've got something that you're doing in multiple places, you will want to abstract it and create a function. And we'll see examples of this. But in general, organize your code so that there is increased reusability, increased readability, maintenance becomes easier. Spacing. You will notice that I will always leave spaces around equal to, and I would like you to do that. It's a lot easier to read code that has those spaces rather than one that looks like this. You see, already the readability has gone down. So don't do that. Leave spaces around your operators. Leave spaces if you've got multiple arguments in a function. Leave spaces after the comma. Do those things. Use spaces, use blank lines to separate out blocks of code. That way your code will also become, easier on the eyes for yourself. So the question you may ask is, okay, all this is fine. How does it matter? Why should I do any of this? So for one thing, if you're part of a team and everybody follows the same best practices, there is uniformity and consistency across team members. Your code will look like somebody else's. It will be equally readable. And I already said it's easier to maintain like that. But think a little hard about who is the main beneficiary. If you write code today, and like I gave you the examples, if instead of button text you go with B and instead of button clicked you go with F, what happens? Let's say you have to make a change to that code 6 months down the road. So that you of 6 months from now will not remember what those A, B, C, D, E, F, G stand for. So the really one of the main beneficiaries of using these best practices is yourself. So if you don't do it for anybody else, do it for yourself. Okay. So let's wrap up today's class. What did we cover today? Take a moment, think about it, what we have done today. So we covered a lot of ground today. You have started a new, very functional app. You laid out a bunch of UI components on the layout. You learned how to arrange them using a constraint layout, create a beautiful grid, how to make the sizes so that they occupy the optimal amount of space. And then you started working on adding interactivity on all those buttons. And not only that, you started processing some of those, the digits and the dot. And all along, we were looking at other things like how to use the autocomplete. How does the XML know that the function will reside in the main activity? Or what, lots of tidbits that we covered in class. And today I'm going to leave with you the one page that I already showed you, and another one for you to read about other types of layouts. We did the constraint layout. I would like you to become familiar with the others. So I'm going to post these links along with this segment of the video. And in the next class, we are going to finish the calculator app. And that's a wrap for today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me. If you would like to see me, you can make an appointment for the office hours. So, all the best for now. Hope you're enjoying the lectures so far.